Now then, I'm Graham, this is my hobby corner, and as you can see by the state of my desk, I'm currently balls deep in gilding a WARHAMMER Custodes Combat Patrol. I've got one model left to go, and I'm going to show you how to gild using that model, and then we'll paint it all up so you can see what the final article looks like. So before we can start gilding anything, we need to talk about gold leaf for a minute. So this is a book of 24 karat gold. These come in packs of 25 sheets and it's 8 by 8 centimeters. I then have this book of fake gold leaf, which is also 25 sheets. However, it's 14 by 14 centimeters. So it's almost 4 times the size of the real gold leaf. So this real book of gold leaf cost me £40, and this book of fake gold leaf cost me £12. So there's quite a price difference between the two. I have gilded my combat patrol with the fake stuff, but that's not down to cost. That was mainly because I felt that the colour was better for the armoury kind of look. With everything that I've gilded so far in this combat patrol, I've probably used about a third of a book. So it's cost me about £5 or £6 to gild the whole combat patrol. Now, based on that, I think if I had used the real gold, I would probably have needed about 1.5 books of these. So it would have cost me about £50 or £60 to gild the entire combat patrol, which I don't think is too bad in the scheme of things, not when you have to consider the fact that, you've got to buy primers, you're buying your different colours and paints and brushes and all these kinds of things. In the scheme of things, it really isn't that much money. Not for what you're getting anyway. Now, like I say, I'm not gilding with the real stuff today, but if you would like to see me do that, I'm thinking I could gild Gulliman. He's got a nice load of trim on him. Let me know in the comments if that's something that you'd like to see, and I'll see what I can do. If not, let me know in the comments. So, since we're talking about gold leaf, this is a really good time to talk about one of the first pitfalls about gilding before you even start putting any metal on models, and that's this stuff. So this is from Amazon. It cost me £5 for 100 sheets, and it's one of those few occasions where you can really say you get what you pay for. It's just horrible stuff to work with. I mean, I nearly gave up trying to gild just because I'd bought this stuff the first time round. I really found out the hard way. So do yourself a favour, spend the extra £7, buy something like this. If you want to use the same stuff that I'm using, I'll pop a link in the description so that you can go grab yourself a pack. I found this stuff really good. So we've talked gold. Now we need to look at how we actually go about getting it onto our minis, which means we need to talk about glue. Or is it better known in the trade, size. This is water-based acrylic size. As you can see, after loads of test pieces and nearly a full combat patrol, it is still full. This stuff will last you for donkeys. I've been told that oil-based size is a lot less labour intensive, however it is a lot more expensive and you won't be able to get as refined a surface. The counter to that is that acrylic size and shrink, which we'll touch more on later. But for what we are doing, I personally think that acrylic size is the best option. End of. Next, we need to talk about brushes. So I've got myself here 2 makeup brushes. I've got one, which is nice and large and got big bristles, which is really nice for just pushing stuff in as a final pass and polishing up the gilding. And then I've got a nice little short haired one, which is still very soft, but is sturdy. So it gives me a bit more control and I can apply a bit more force with it when I'm pushing the gold leaf in initially. On top of your brushes, these help, a nice lint-free duster or cloth. Again, just for polishing, and if you're gilding with gold, this can be useful for laying your gold on. Create yourself a little bit of a gold cushion. And then lastly, we need ourselves a dull knife. So I'm using a butter knife, so that you can cut the gold into smaller parts. If you were going to do lots of gilding, you could go out and get yourself a gilding cushion and a proper gilding knife. These will probably set you back about £40. But considering this is my first combat patrol that I'm doing, my first real go at doing any models, the butter knife is doing me fine. and the duster. One thing you might see when you start doing your own research to gilding your own minis is these. These are called burnishing stones. So I got a pack of these. It cost me about £25. And I can tell you now, save yourself £25. Don't buy them. I found them to be no use for polishing gold on plastic. The surface area that you're polishing is just too small, and the risk of damaging the gold is just too great. They might be worthwhile when it comes to gilding a vehicle, but otherwise I'd just give them a miss. So that's the niche kind of tools that you would need, beyond and above the usual. So now let's get cracking on some gilding. I wouldn't recommend gilding directly to the plastic. I found that the metal and the glue don't adhere very well to it, so I would suggest priming your models first. Now when it comes to priming, have a think about the colour you want to use before you do it. Gold leaf is that thin that the colour that is behind it will have an effect on the overall hue of the gold. The redder the colour is that you use it behind it, the more antique the gold will look. However, the more yellow the colour is that you use, the more brighter and vibrant the gold will look. I went in the middle and I used a gold primer. That was partially to try and help hide any mistakes that happen, since I'm fairly new at doing this myself, and also just so that you guys can see the difference between metallic paints and real gold. One other thing you maybe want to consider before you actually do any gilding is thinking about what sub-assemblies you need to do. It can be an absolute twat to try and gild into the smallest nook and cranny. So what I'm doing here is I'm applying the size now. To do this, you want to grab yourself a synthetic brush. Nothing special, don't overload your brush. Less is more. If you miss an area that you want to gild, don't worry too much about it. You will have to make another pass so you can capture it then. If you put too much on the model, then the size will dry unevenly and the gilding could look lumpy. If you mess up and you gild it while it's still wet in areas, the glue will eat the gold leaf and just turn it into a nasty mulch. Glue has a two-stage drying process. The first stage should be ready in about 15 minutes. It'll go completely clear and it should also be tacky to touch. Now if you're gilding something like a rhino, say, with lots of big flat panels on it, then what I would do is I would just touch it with one of your knuckles. Don't touch it with your fingerprint, because it can leave a mark on the glue, and fingerprints will draw more attention than knuckles will. However, if you're just doing it on a mini like this one, then don't worry, touching it will be fine. The details are so small that you won't be able to see a fingerprint there. The second stage of the drying process takes around 24 hours, so you get a really long work time with this stuff. That means that there's no harm in making it your last job before you go to bed and then getting up the next day and gilding at some point then. It doesn't matter. If you're feeling a little bit devil may care, you can crack out the hairdryer to speed up that first drying process. One thing I would say is that make sure you do it on a low temperature and from a distance. Otherwise you do risk drying the glue out completely and then you'll have to start again. While your glue is drying though, one thing that you can do is you can prep your gold leaf. Don't want to put a single sheet onto your mini or just blather it in gold. You're asking for trouble. Instead, get your dull knife and your sheet of leaf and then cut it into roughly 1 centimetre squares. This will give you more control and go a long way to stop any unwanted flaking, tearing, splits and clumps of leaf getting into your glue. If you're working with real gold leaf, don't, for God's sake, cut the leaf directly in the book. It's much thinner than the fake stuff and you'll end up making a complete mess. Instead, lay your duster on the desk, place your knife face down onto the gold leaf in the middle and then blow over the gold leaf. That'll then fold it onto your knife and then you can gently place it on the duster, blow in the other direction to then unfold it onto the duster. and you can then, in straight, flat lines, cut the gold leaf. Don't ever touch real gold leaf. You can get away with touching the fake stuff, but it's attracted to grease, and whether you like it or not, your skin is covered in the stuff. So if you end up getting it on your hands, it will just stick to you like a limpet. If you are worried about it going on your hands, then I'd suggest using some lint-free glove. With your size clear and tacky and your gold leaf cuts, it's time to start laying some gold. Get the short bristled makeup brush and rub the bristles across your cheek or the back of your hand a few times just to pick up a tiny amount of grease. This will help you to pick up your first piece of gold leaf. It should stick to the brush. Think about where you are placing your gold. Drop it on the model at either the highest or lowest point. Try and keep the rest of the gold leaf loose, then gently push it into the recesses. Once it looks like there are no more areas that are at risk of the gold leaf cracking or splitting, then you can start to push a little bit harder and start to work that gold leaf in. Once the gold leaf is attached to that glue, it'll be a bugger to get back off. So don't worry about pressing too hard. Try to resist rubbing any excess off at this point. If you do have to, then brush away from any size that might be remaining on the model. When you get your next piece of gold leaf, what you want to do is you want to try and lay it onto the model so there is a slight overlap between the two pieces. This will just help prevent any seams between the pieces. Once all the glued areas are covered, first with your small makeup brush, get a little bit more aggressive still. Give it a good brush, up, down, left, right, in circles, clockwise, anti-clockwise. Once you feel like you've done everything that you can with the small brush, get your bigger brush and give it another go with that, just to make sure that you've removed any excess or any pieces that might not have been completely glued on. You can repeat this stage with the duster if you want, just to make doubly sure that everything has been removed and that you've polished the gold leaf to a decent shine. Now have a look at your model. Can you see any cracks? Can you see any bits that you've missed or splits in the gold leaf? Yes, thought so, but that's fine. Don't worry about it. Just apply another thin coat of size on those areas and go again. Gold leaf is that thin you can apply a fair few coats before you start to lose any details on the model. So if you're using real gold that's over 22 carats, the gold will never tarnish. However, if you're using fake gold, this is made mostly of copper and zinc, so it will tarnish over time. To stop this from happening, or to slow it down at least, you need to apply yourself some gloss varnish. The only thing that you really want to be concerned with when you're talking about real gold leaf is how often the model is going to be handled. If you're going to be handling the model a lot, then it's probably best to give that a varnish as well. It will knock some of the shine off the gold, but it's not to the point that it's obvious. So one final step with your gilding is give it a day to dry. As I mentioned, acrylic size can shrink. From my experience, I think that happens more when you apply the size too thickly. But I have found that if you apply the varnish to the gilding before the size is completely dried, it is less likely to crack. If there are any splits, then again, it's just a case of going over it with some more size and just a little bit more gold leaf, give it another varnish, and you're done. Time to crack out the vacuum and clear up all the rest. So now my guy's all gilded, all that's left for me to do is give him a coat of paint. If you found this helpful or you've enjoyed the video, then please hit the like button so that YouTube pushes it out to others. This is a really fun way to expand the hobby, and I've found it to be a great palette cleanser.
You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me high and dry. Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're channeling wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh.
All painted, here's the finished piece. Feel free to check out another one of my videos. Ta-ra!